Hey everybody, it's Eden. I hope that you're doing wonderful. If you're here, you're probably the kind of person who loves words and exploring all the hidden layers and possible interpretations words can have in the texts that we read. And if not, then this video is probably not for you. I'm just kidding. Stick around. Who knows? Maybe you'll discover a new passion. So let's start with a fun question. What do the movie WALL-E and the book The Very Hungry Caterpillar have in common? Though you might sense some connection between them, what we're going to talk about today can actually be applied to any book or movie that you watch. So let's uncover it together. So let's start by taking a closer look at one of the most iconic children's books out there, The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle. If you've never read it, or if it's been a while, here's a very short recap. It's about a little caterpillar who eats and eats until he becomes a butterfly. It's repetitive, it's cute, it teaches the life cycle of a butterfly, and kids absolutely adore it. But what if I told you that beneath this sweet little story, there's actually a subtle message about environmental crisis, overconsumption, and even the way we think about creation itself? Let's take a closer look. We begin with an almost Edenic moment. One Sunday morning, the warm sun came up, and pop, out of the egg came a tiny and very hungry caterpillar. Sunday, light, creation, and the first thing he eats, you guessed it, an apple. That's when the hunger begins. He devours fruit at first, but quickly moves on to salami, cake, cheese, ice cream. You could even say that this poor little caterpillar lives in a world where natural food is scarce. Where's the garden, the plants, the soil? He seems to be eating whatever he finds near a bin in an urban park, some leftovers of man-made world, not the bounty of nature, but processed food. Nature seems strangely absent. Also, there's something so human and so modern about that kind of hunger. It's consumption without satisfaction. Even after a stomach ache, he still eats more. For me, it's just too familiar. He eventually becomes a big, fat caterpillar. Not strong, not healthy, just overfed and sluggish. And probably deeply regretting that ice cream salami combo. And so he then builds a house around himself, like he has no other choice but to stop moving. When we read this story through the lens of ecocriticism, it shifts. A book about a butterfly becomes a quiet metaphor for ecological imbalance, for our detachment from the natural world, and maybe for how children are being raised in a world full of artificial abundance but natural scarcity. By the way, have you ever reread a children's story and noticed something new, something deep or disturbing that totally changed it for you? If so, let me know in the comments because I love those moments. So what exactly is ecocriticism? Let's talk about it. You asked and you shall receive. A few of you have asked me, Kathleen, if you see this, I thought about you especially to make some videos about some new theories in English literature. And since this is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about, I'm super excited to be sharing this with you. Now, because each theory or approach is usually so vast, after all, scholars spend their entire lives exploring and researching them, that it's quite impossible to take all the research that is out there and concise it into a short and engaging video. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share with you really just the big ideas behind each theory and show you how scholars actually use that specific theory to read and analyze a text so you can have a think about it and form your own opinions. I'm basically saying that if you're from the field, please don't come at me if some of the information is missing. With that sort of disclaimer out of the way, let's move on to ecocriticism, which, to put simply, is an earth-centered way of reading literature. It mainly asks two big questions. How does storytelling shape the way we see nature? And how does nature shape the stories we tell? Scholars call it an umbrella term because it covers a bunch of different approaches, but they all care about one thing: the relationship between stories, humans, and the environment. It's not just about rainforests or parking lots. It's interdisciplinary. It borrows from everywhere. Literature, science, philosophy, anthropology, you name it. It brings a collaboration between people who usually don't end up in the same room, and all are asking about how we imagine the world we live in. So let's just jump into a very short and quick history lesson about the first wave of ecocriticism that started back then in the 80s and 90s. One of the early voices that echoes through the first wave of ecocriticism was William Wordsworth, a romantic poet that, like many of his contemporaries, believed that nature wasn't just beautiful, it was also deeply wise and precious. I was thinking to read a little bit from the introduction and to read for you what they say about Wordsworth. I'm just worried that it might be too boring and too much. Well, I'll read it and I might cut it off later or not. We'll see. So this is what they say about Wordsworth. Nature was to Wordsworth a living soul that reveals herself alike in the movements of the stars, the yearnings of the heart, the sleep of a great city, or the decay of a flower. I loved it. Moreover, they say here, his poetry makes no division between man and the world in which he lives. He thinks of all created things, human or inanimate, as parts of one great whole, filling their appointed place, moving in their established order. He is our greatest nature poet because he is the poet of more than external nature. He is, in a higher degree, the poet of men. No other poet is more consistently original and faithful in his pictures of what the eye can see, more luminous in his interpretation of it, but he could never disassociate it from the human heart. Anyway, what I really wanted to read for you is just a part of a poem. In his 1798 poem, The Tables Turned, he urges us to step away from books and let nature itself be our teacher. Books! 'Tis a dull and endless strife. Come hear the woodland linnet. How sweet is music! On my life, there's more of wisdom in it. And hark, how blithe the throstle sings! He too is no mean preacher. Come forth into the light of things. Let nature be your teacher. Wordsworth. What a name you have, and how you used it magnificently. So translating that to our modern day and age, Wordsworth is telling us to put our phones down and go outside. But do that after you finish watching. I'm just kidding, you don't have to. So that was the main idea of the first wave of ecocriticism, that literature should help us reconnect with the natural world, and that nature holds knowledge and moral value that society has long overlooked. The idea was often to speak for nature, to raise the awareness of it, and to inspire people to protect it. But the more recent second wave, they started asking tougher questions. Who actually gets access to nature? How is the idea of nature shaped by race, gender, or class? What do we even mean by nature? And suddenly the environment wasn't just forests or fields. It expanded to include cities, polluted rivers, poverty, and even digital landscapes. My camera needed a break, so took advantage of that. Cheers. What do ecocritics actually do? Ecocriticism is not just about books and poetry. It can be applied to pretty much any kind of storytelling. We can use it to analyze art, films, music videos, even YouTube content, because everything can be considered a text. Stories are not just in novels, especially not today. They're on our screens, on TikTok, in AI-generated images, and in the vlogs that we watch on a Tuesday night. That means we can stop right there in the middle of a binge watch or a scroll session and ask ourselves, is this showing me the world as it is, or Is it the influencer's garden with the perfect sunset filter? How a movie like Avatar portrays the natural world. On social media, what kind of environments are we seeing? Cities, nature, shopping centers. How curated is the view of life we're consuming? Is nature something unpredictable that we should be afraid of? Or something that is just in the background, so passive with no agency? Because we're not just passive consumers. The way nature is represented to us shape the way we think about it. Ecocriticism helps us notice these representations, question them, and maybe even change the way we engage with the world around us. So what does it look like when someone reads a text ecocritically? There are many ways to approach a text ecocritically, but there are three more popular lenses that ecocritics often use, and they are pastoral, wilderness, and ecofeminism. So let's quickly touch each one very, very briefly. Pastoral. Through a pastoral lens, ecocritics look at how books contrast the countryside with the city. Pastoral stories often romanticize rural life and present it as peaceful, slow, in harmony with nature, while cities are portrayed as chaotic and disconnected. So ecocritics ask, is this view realistic or nostalgic? Does it ignore the challenges of rural life and idealize a past that never existed? And what is the purpose of presenting the contrast in this specific way in this text? Wilderness. Wilderness in some texts is shown as something dangerous or mysterious. In others, it's a place of escape or discovery. And we have stories about the lone hiker and the retreat into the forest. Through this lens, ecocritics ask, what does that say about how we view the wild? Let's take Tarzan or Pocahontas, for example. Who is the wild one? Should the wild be something to fear, to conquer, or something sacred? Ecofeminism. Ecofeminism draws a connection between the exploitation of nature and the oppression of women. And through this lens, ecocritics ask, why do we describe the earth as Mother Nature? Why is nature so often feminized in stories? What does that say about power and our use of it? Put it into practice. Knowing all these tropes, we can look at the sacred garden, for example, and see how we can put it into practice. The contrast between the city and the countryside is very explicit in the text. The countryside is very pastoral, the weather reflects the emotions of the characters, and nature has the agency and power to transform the lives of the characters. It's not just scenery and in the background, it's a force that heals and transforms. At the beginning, Mary Lennox was described as the most disagreeable looking child with a thin little face, thin little body, thin hair. But by the end of the book, Mary and her cousin Colin have transformed and become plump, joyfully energetic children, nurtured by each other, but most of all by a place, the sacred garden, which is wild nature. And from the ecofeminism perspective, the garden created by a woman and locked away after her death becomes a symbol of repressed femininity and hidden vitality. Mary, as we discussed earlier, is also transformed by the garden, but she transforms into the traditional role the garden represents. She tends Colin, nurtures him. She becomes almost like a nurse or a mother figure to Colin and to the garden. Why this matters? Because stories shape how we see the world. They tell us what's valuable, what's normal, what's powerful, and what's disposable. If we only tell stories where nature is silent or invisible, we might forget that we're part of it. So as we said, ecocriticism helps us ask better questions, imagine better futures, and sometimes it even changes how we read a book we thought we knew, like The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Next time that you read a book or watch a film or consume any form of content, you can ask yourself, how is the environment portrayed? What hidden messages about nature are woven into the stories that we love? If you like this sort of deep dive into theory, Please don't forget to like this video so I'll know that I should continue rambling about theories with you. You're, of course, more than welcome to let me know if there's a specific literary theory you want me to cover, or a time period maybe, or maybe a specific text that you want me to analyze, or talk about a specific genre, whatever you like. Also, if you have any insights or thoughts about ecocriticism or about any of the ideas we discussed today, I'd be more than happy to hear them. Thank you so much for watching. Happy reading to all of you, and I hope to see you again next time. Mwah. Ooh, what about WALL-E? Well, this video is super long already, and I'm sure now that you have all the information, you can analyze WALL-E by yourself. If you want, we can continue the discussion in the comment section and write our interpretations of WALL-E. If you heard someone snoring throughout the video, that was by the courtesy of our main guest, our ecocritic expert, Oliver, who is wild, pastoral, and ecofeminist. That's it. I'm done rumbling today. Thank you so much. Mwah.